On January 20, 1931, Julia Wallace was bludgeoned to death, and her husband was convicted, then freed, because the crime seemed physically impossible. William Herbert Wallace was a quiet man, a chess player, an insurance agent, someone who lived by routine. On the evening of January 19, 1931, that routine was interrupted by a telephone call at the Liverpool Chess Club where he was playing. A stranger's voice on the line identified himself as R.M. Qualtrough, claiming he needed to discuss an insurance matter of some urgency. The caller requested a meeting at his home, giving only a vague address on Menlove Avenue. Wallace agreed politely and made a note of the name. It seemed like ordinary business. But the next morning, when Julia Wallace was found brutally murdered in their home, that single phone call would become the most suspicious detail of all, the thread that would unravel everything. On the evening of January 20, 1931, William Wallace returned home to 29, Wolverton Street in Liverpool after his fruitless search for R.M. Qualtrough. What he discovered would haunt the case for decades. Julia lay in the parlor, her skull fractured by repeated blows from what investigators believed was a heavy iron poker or similar implement. She had been struck at least 10 times. Blood pooled beneath her head and spattered across the floor and furniture. Her body was still warm when discovered, suggesting death had occurred within the previous hour or two. Yet here emerged the central paradox that would eventually save William's life. The medical examiner placed time of death between 7 and 9 o'clock that evening. William claimed he had left the house around 7:15 to search for Qualtrough's address, walking through unfamiliar neighborhoods and calling on strangers. Multiple witnesses placed him in various locations across Liverpool during this window. When police examined the timeline forensically, they faced an uncomfortable truth: even if William had committed the murder in those minutes before departing, he would have needed to clean himself of blood, wash away evidence, and position himself to be seen by multiple independent witnesses across the city within an implausibly short span. The murder was savage and messy. The scene suggested fury and violence. Yet the logistics suggested something impossible had occurred. The jury found William Wallace guilty. The motive was there: life insurance, a failing marriage, financial strain. The opportunity seemed clear. But then something extraordinary happened. The Court of Appeal didn't simply review the evidence. They did something far more damning. They examined the clock. William claimed he was out searching for Qualtrough when Julia was killed. Police believed she died between 7:15 and 8:45 that evening. But here's where the case unravels. Neighbors placed William on the street during that window. One woman saw him asking directions. Another watched him walk past her house. And crucially, a milk boy encountered him at a specific time that made the entire prosecution collapse. The mathematics were brutal. If William killed Julia, he would have needed to bludgeon her repeatedly, clean the blood from his clothes and hands, compose himself, and appear calm and natural to multiple witnesses, all within minutes. Forensic experts testified it was physically impossible. The medical examiner couldn't even pinpoint a death time precise enough to exclude him conclusively. The Court of Appeal didn't just overturn his conviction. They effectively declared the crime, as prosecuted, a logical impossibility. William Wallace walked free in 1931, exonerated not by proof of innocence, but by the simple fact that the only suspect couldn't have done it. The real killer remained unknown. After William Wallace walked free, the investigation simply stopped. Police had their man, or thought they did, and when the courts rejected that conviction, they had nowhere left to turn. Julia's killer vanished into the fog of 1931 Liverpool, and with each passing year, the trail grew colder. No new suspects emerged. No deathbed confession surfaced. No piece of physical evidence suddenly pointed elsewhere. The case went dormant, filed away as one of England's most perplexing failures of justice. Yet it refused to die in the public imagination. Crime writers became obsessed. Agatha Christie herself was fascinated by the Wallace case, the logical impossibility of it all, the way the crime seemed to violate the very laws of physics and time. How could someone kill Julia, clean the blood away, and vanish without a trace, all within minutes? Over 90 years later, amateur investigators still pore over court transcripts and neighborhood timelines, searching for the name that was never named. The case proved that exonerating an innocent man doesn't solve a murder, it just leaves it suspended in eternal mystery, a perfect crime not because it was committed flawlessly, but because it was never truly solved at all. The Wallace case remains unsolved, a perfect crime not because it was executed flawlessly, but because the only suspect was innocent. William Wallace walked free, exonerated by logic itself. Julia's killer vanished into history, leaving behind only questions and an impossible timeline that protects them still. 90 years later, we're no closer to the truth. Sometimes the perfect crime isn't about skill, it's about circumstance and timing conspiring to hide the guilty forever.